architect of the Dungeon Masters Guild. Thank you very much for your support.
I'm Satine Phoenix. I'm a huge Wizards of the Coast fan, and they let me play in their world. I run on Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. twitch.tv/D&D. I run a D&D game called Sirens of the Realms. It's an all-girl bard band. It's super cool. I also host GM Tips on Geek and Sundry, on Dread on Geek and Sundry, and what else? Founder of Celebrity Charity 20 charity, and I run a meetup group in Los Angeles, amongst other things.
I really kind of hate to follow you because it sounds so much less interesting, actually. No, I've only been with Wizards for just under 2 years now, actually, and I'm on the marketing team, which is really awesome. I get to deal with people every day, and it's cool because I used to be a game store owner. So I did that for 16 years before coming to Wizards. So I got to deal with all of you on a daily basis. So I got to bring that information and that kind of perspective into the company, and it's been really exciting, and I'm actually learning a lot, and I like getting to have these moments where I can come back and speak to everybody and kind of share what we're doing. So one of the things we want to kind of kick off and talk about things on a more casual level, because that's really why we're all here, right? We're not here to all play super competitive and, you know, that level of stuff, but we want to just have fun, and that's really kind of what playing our games are like, you know, at that, and what we're really expecting. So actually, just show of hands, how many of you play Magic or D&D? I love that. That's awesome. Right? Now, how many of you play at home or just with your friends or on your kitchen table? Or, yeah, see, just about everybody. Yeah, exactly. And that's what we kind of want to focus on sometimes. You know, you hear a lot about our competitive play and our pro tour and things like that, but we all play on that casual level. You know, we all want to keep having that introductory fun, that new energy when you first discover something, you know, and that's what it's about. You know, what we ask of you guys a lot is keep that alive, you know, keep teaching people, you know, keep that experience. You know, you can always be deeper, it can always be more competitive, but we all have those casual experiences that really drew us into the game. I mean, I'm sure if we go down the line, everybody kind of has a, this is how I started crazy beginner story that has nothing to do with being competitive.
Nothing at all. I started playing Magic in 1994. I had the most exciting summer job in the world in college. I worked the weekday shift at a lifeguard at a Holiday Inn inside pool.
Nice.
Now here's the thing about that. Nobody goes swimming at a Holiday Inn inside pool Monday through Friday when it's all filled with business people. So I stared at an empty pool for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. Super fun, right? And so I got a copy of Games Magazine, and in it, there was an ad and an editorial and a review for this new game called Magic the Gathering. And it seemed super cool. Like my boyfriend then, now husband, and I played a lot of games, played a lot of card games, and we're like, this sounds pretty cool. And I came home from work the next day, and he had stopped off at our local used bookstore, and he had gotten us each a starter deck, like one of those old things like this, and the rule book that was like this big with like 4-point font, right? And he just looked at me and goes, read this whole thing, and don't ask me any questions till you're done, and then we'll try it. and that's it. That's how we learned how to play Magic, and it was just the most amazing thing. It was super fun, and now I'm here.
I don't know what to talk about first, Magic or D&D. I started playing D&D. I was jug kicking and screaming into my first D&D game with my younger brother, who really wanted me to come play with him and his friends because they needed another person to play, and they didn't have a cleric. That was
You're a good man, Chris. Good man.
That was 1981. Yeah, that was a long time ago. So that was a blast. And they all quit playing, and now I am doing this. So that's awesome. They totally ditched me again. I learned how to play Magic from a friend, a coworker that I had when I worked for AT&T a long, long time ago when I just got out of college. And he handed me a box of junk that he didn't want. And I made, well, I'm not going to say I spun gold out of it, but I had fun.
I never talk about this, but I think I was playing Magic before I played D&D.
Woohoo!
Yeah, my friends, I was a part of a couple different youth groups growing up in the early 90s, and the boys wanted to play Magic, so they always had all the cards, and I remember playing, but then my love of D&D took over, and I found a group with my best friends in high school. Apparently they were playing without me, and then I found out they were playing, and I was like, we're playing together. And so it was like 1995, and I was just playing with my friends, and we would do the whole full weekend, like every single weekend playing, or any time, like, okay, we've got like 30 minutes after class, let's just get in a scenario. And it kind of escalated from there into college. Yeah.
Mine's actually a little different. I started out playing D&D, and I was actually on a field trip for school. And we were in Corpus Christi, just remember, Padre Staples Mall. And I went in, I was going to get some D&D stuff. And this guy shows me these cards and says, like, oh, there's this game called Magic. I'm like, okay, well, what is this? And sadly, it has an unlimited and a revised starter, both still on the shelf. So I asked him, like, well, what's the difference? He says, well, revised has stuff from, like, unlimited, but it also has stuff from, like, Arabian Nights and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, great, I'll take the revised one. Now, in hindsight, that was a bad mistake. Aww. But I took it home, I'm reading it, and I realized, well, I can't do anything with this because I need another deck. Well, this sucks. So I threw it in my drawer. And like 2 weeks later, one of my friends comes home, and he's like, hey, I was down visiting my brother in Austin, and he showed me this game, and he's describing it. I'm like, dude, I have some of that at home. So we got together, and we played for like 6 hours with 2 junkie starter decks, and that started a whole different world for me. So now I'm here.
It's really interesting, the whole idea of casual events, because you think of D&D and you think, oh, that's 4 to 6 to 8 to a weekend hours of my time, but I'm now a writer for Guild Adepts, and I just wrote my first Adventures League module, and we're writing them shorter. So I think my game was 2 hours. I've done 1-hour games. I've done D&D games with a D20 in like 20 minutes with friends with no character sheets. And I think that's important when you're looking at these different games, is to realize they come with a set of rules, but you can do them anywhere. You can play them any way you really want.
Oh, for sure. Like, each of you sitting here, you can be the motivator, the creator for your groups. Like, you just have to be the catalyst to get everybody started. Like, we're in a culture right now where everybody's a potential player. Like, geek culture is huge. So don't be afraid to share it. Get out there and play, and just get with your friends, invite some people over, and just show them. I mean, this opened a door for all of us every different way possible. And it could be anytime, any moment. So you could be the one that starts the other cool thing, or get somebody a really sweet job. Like, who knows?
It's true. One of the things I just wanted to note that's really great about Magic, and compared to D&D, people tend to think that Magic's like super competitive because somebody wins all the time. But I mean, yeah, sure. But even our best players lose a lot. That's the thing about Magic. You have to be ready to lose a lot. But the nice thing about Magic is that there's like a rules system of like how the cards work, but there's a lot of inventiveness that goes into the rules you set up for your deck construction and how you play and how you draft and how you do things like that. And in fact, some of our most popular formats today are formats that were created by the community for themselves, right? So we have a format called Commander that a lot of people love to play that was actually created by our community. It's not something that we did, and they built it up, and a bunch of people played it, and it's super fun because it's multiplayer, and I get to just play a bunch of multiplayer around the table, and it's super casual, and people love playing it. And so you can feel free to take that basic rule system, but then devise your own way on how you want to do your deck construction rules or how you want to set things up. And there's tons of flexibility. I mean, the key heart of Magic was that idea that Richard Garfield had, that everybody gets to be their own game designer when they play Magic, right? And that's still true.
Cool.
So yeah, the next level though is after you teach everybody how to play, well, what if you want to expand your group?
Speaking of public events, schools, libraries, and clubs, my experience with this is I run the Los Angeles meetup group for Dungeons and Dragons, and I mean other role-playing games too, but I'm obsessed, so it says Dungeons and Dragons. And I lived in Australia, I had no friends, this is like 2007, and I wanted to meet people, but I didn't want to go to a bar or anything, and I'm like, okay, what do? I want like-minded people, I want adults who play Dungeons and Dragons. And I typed in meetup.com and found people. I made friends instantly, and we played twice a week, every week, and now, so that was 10 years ago, now we have, between Rudy and Maya's meetup groups, we have over 2,000 people in Los Angeles who are just constantly looking for, well, mostly game masters. But it's really neat that we have that accessibility now. The other public event thing that I do is called Celebrity Charity 20, and I started this about 7 years ago with Keith Baker, who wrote Eberron, and with Matt Mercer, which I'm sure most of you know, Critical Role, who's one of the first Dungeon Masters on it. And all we wanted to do was my favorite things, play Dungeons and Dragons and raise money for a charity. It's for Reach Out and Read. It gets pediatricians to teach parents how to get their kids to read, and then that's more of, future gamers and whatnot. But that was started because we wanted to give back to the community, and now we do it every year, and people can watch from all over the world, and these public events, there's something about giving back to the community and communicating with the community and doing this. I mean, you guys all have this experience with, you guys do a lot of public events.
Yeah.
We do a lot of public events.
Yeah, and talking about schools, I frequently get contacted by schools, and I've sponsored many school groups because teachers and, despite the nefarious roots of Dungeons and Dragons back in the 80s, today, teachers and administrators at our public schools are starting to recognize the value of role-playing games and what they bring to learning in the classrooms and so forth. And so they want to have sponsored groups inside of their schools, and if they don't know how to start. They have people who are interested, but they don't know what they're doing. So they contact us, and we make sure that they get at least the minimum information they possibly need to get that group up and going, and maybe a little bit of product support so that they can get the kids playing right away.
Well, it's really important, like, that we keep that going through the ages, I think.
Yep.
Yeah. We've got a set of kits that we're putting together right now for Magic that their entire purpose is to reach out and give them to libraries, boys and girls clubs, school groups and things like that to kind of seed that love out there and have those clubs start going and have people be able to game and play. The great thing about libraries is libraries today are eager to have all kinds of a community gathering center, right? Like that's what they want to be. They want to be community gathering centers. And being able to play games in a library fits in exactly with what they want. So if any of you have the will to do so, if you walk into your local library and talk to a librarian there and say, hey, I want to start a gaming group here, I guarantee you they will be over the moon enthused to start that up and help you guys run that.
Yeah, and those things are really key, because I will say in my experience, when I had my business, like there was a lot of students, I would say, and even younger kids that came through, and you could see how their confidence increased. You could see, where their grades got better, and they were learning a lot through gaming. And I think a lot of teachers and a lot of schools, and like you're saying, a lot of libraries are even starting to see where these benefits are. So I would say even after you make that step, if you find a group that's interested, reach out to your local game store and say, hey, I have this library or this school or this youth group or whatever it is, and we need some help. And they would love that. I mean, it gives them access to new customers. It gets your group a bunch of extra material and support from experts that already do it. So that's something I'd like to challenge all of you to do. If you get an opportunity to go out, find those groups and make those connections for sure.
Make those groups. There's a place in Paris, and it blew my mind when I went there. It's a 4-level, it's like a restaurant on one level, and then like a bar on every other level, and it's like super nerded out. It's the coolest thing, and there's just board games, card games, and they just have them there, and people are literally role-playing with like a Game of Thrones, like throne chair. This thing is incredible, and it's just like it's a bar in Paris. Somebody had this idea, they made it, and now it's one of the coolest places I've ever been to in the world, and it's all about gaming. That's
Why would
what they
anybody want to go
focus on.
home? I want to
I
live
know.
there.
No, the
That's
place
awesome.
was packed. Every floor was packed. So you guys can make that. I don't know if you've been to like Card Kingdom up in Seattle. Amazing. It's like they got Mox Boarding House, and it's like amazing food. And then next to it is all the games, and they have all these little areas. You have to make that. That person was a fan, and they were obsessed with the game, and they made it. You guys can make all that too.
One last little pitch for schools, in particular in boys and girls clubs. If you're a real diehard gamer, you tend to have like just a bunch of leftover gaming stuff, right? Especially if you're a Magic player, you have like boxes of cards and things. So one of the things that I used to do when I ran events is I used to set up just a big cardboard box, and I put a marker each time, and I said, cards for kids. And so when people were done with their drafts or whatever, they would just come and just drop all their extra cards in there. And I had one of the guys who played in my events who'd pick up the box at the end of every night, and he'd go drop it off at his local school club. And the kids were just like, it's just like Christmas, like every time he came in, it's just like, here's a whole box of cards, right? And so you get to spread the love of gaming and really share that experience with people who really need it.
So with all that, like, what do we have that's bigger than those clubs? Conventions.
Yeah.
Wait, what are these conventions, and where can I find one?
Actually, I can show you one when we leave here.
Okay, great.
Awesome.
Conventions are key to providing you guys with the big fan experiences that you want, and with the thing that kind of pulls everybody together and shows them that they are actually a part of a much larger community than just what they have in their homes, and bring you together to basically socialize and to enjoy the games that you really love. So specifically, I will talk a little bit about epic events. For the Dungeons & Dragons Adventurers League, epic events are a way of not just bringing 6 people to a table to work together and cooperate and have a good time. It's a great way to bring 60 people, 100 people.
60 tables.
Yeah.
80, was it like 82 is your biggest one?
No, our biggest epic was 90 tables. We had over 700 people, including staff, running a single adventure, everybody with runners working together and participating in this massive community event. It was at Gen Con 2014, and every time the whole room cheered, the entire convention could hear us. And this is the type of thing that literally galvanizes like an entire gaming community across a country, right? And we're lucky in North America that we have these massive events. They don't always have them across the globe, and we're starting to work on building those. But those are the types of things that you can help us with by putting together your smaller events and then coming to us and saying, hey, I'd love to run an epic event. Epic events don't have to be 90 tables. They can be 4 tables. They could be 6 tables. They could be 10 tables, right? But you'll still get everybody in that room together for a single unified experience that they can all walk away from at the end and say, wow, that was like better than seeing the last 2 Avengers movies, right?
Because you're making it.
Yes.
You're a part of the
Yes,
epic
absolutely.
story.
Yep. So one of the first game conventions I ever went to was in New Jersey. I think it's called Dreamation. And the coolest thing was there was this event called the Magic Grand Melee. Has anybody in the room ever played in a Grand Melee Magic event? Oh my God, none of you have. Oh wait, one over there. Woo, sweet.
There's a whole 3 of us in the room that have.
Okay, so now I gotta tell you what this is, because it's awesome. So basically, you get like 150 people, Magic players, and you set up the tables in like a huge rectangle all the way around, and you all play one huge multiplayer game of Magic. And I see some people going like, how the hell does that work? So what happens is that you have this sphere of influence of there's like you, and then there's the 2 people next to you, and the 2 people next to you, right? So you can like attack, there's like the 2 people next to you, or like your targeted people, and your area of effects hit like the 2 people out. And so you have these like markers, like whatever cups or whatever. And so you have multiple turns going at the same time, and you can move your cup when, you know, the next group of 5 like wouldn't be impacted by your thing. And you all play, and everybody starts with a booster pack in front of you, and whoever kills you gets your booster pack, right? So by the time you get to the end, there's like just stacks of booster packs in front of people, right, from everyone who kills everybody else. It takes hours, but it is the most super fun thing. But then you make it even crazier, and the people running it will do big, huge global effects that'll happen randomly, and they'll just be like, okay, stop, everybody, Wrath of God. And like everybody Wrath of Gods. And you're like, oh my God, all the creatures just died, what do I do? And it's super fun and exciting, right? And just the fact that you all experience that, like, I mean, you just walk out of there, and I mean, you talk about Magic, I said you have to be able to lose a lot. Like, that's like 150 people and like 1 person's at the end. But just that shared experience it's the definition of epic, right? It's just awesome.
Yeah, I think that's really what a lot of this is about, is trying to go and experience it with a larger part of the community, like to kind of reaffirm like why you're doing it. And you see all these people sharing in the same thing you're in, and it's just fun and it feels good. You know, you're creating that awesome moment, and really you're creating memories and experiences. You know, that's really why we game. It's not just, well, we have these cool things, and you know, I got together on a Wednesday night with a couple of friends, so that's cool. Like, you really are trying to create something that you can come back to and you tell those stories. I mean, I have a game that we ran a couple years ago. It was my longest game I've ever run. It was about 3 years and 4 months, I believe was the time. Yeah, which is insane. My next longest game is like 8 months. And we still talk about everything that happened in the game. Like, we'll literally be online and talking about it, and somebody will throw out an insult from the characters that were playing that game, you know? So you really are just trying to have more of those moments. And that's really what these conventions and big epic events are about, is finding ways to share those moments with even more people.
To add on to that, it's really interesting the different kinds of things that you can do, even if you don't have a lot of people, but well, I'm saying like thousands of people, but if you have like a group of people, you can do stuff within your games. Like for D&D, for instance, you can have, I do like a D&D PvP, where I get like 2 dungeon masters, and then they're like pitting the players against each other, and then you have other players come in, and then they play the monsters, and it's this big fun event that you can do with your friends and your friends' friends. Yeah, I'm really excited, sorry.
It's okay, we want you to be excited. But yeah, you know, but we've talked about all these things, but then there's also an even higher level of play.
Esports, competitive gaming. Those aren't scary words, believe it or not. You can have competitive gaming that is super fun and engaging and accessible and welcoming and everything else, because it ranges, right? It ranges, when you say competitive gaming, of course there's things like the Magic Pro Tour that happens at the super highest level, but then there's also just getting together and playing a tournament of 8 people gathered together at home or in their store. And I want to tell you guys the story of how Friday Night Magic started. Has anybody in the room played in Friday Night Magic? Your local stores? Yeah, okay, good. So here's a little secret. You're playing Friday Night Magic because that's how my husband and I played at our local game store before I worked for Wizards. So my first job at Wizards of the Coast was, I was a DCI policy manager. So I was in charge of the tournament floor rules, and I investigated people who cheated, and that was super fun. I've got lots of stories about that, and all kinds of stuff like that. And I got my job, and my husband got his job shortly after. And his job was the retail play manager. So he helped design those first retail store programs. And before we went out to Wizards, we played Magic. And the store we played in was called Wizard World. It's called Toy Wiz now, but it was Wizard World. It's owned by the family of the people who do the Wizard World magazine. And they had Magic tournaments that happened every Friday night. And we'd go in and we'd play Magic, and we'd either draft or play Constructed or do whatever, and it was just super casual and fun. It was just for like hardly anything, I don't know, a little store credit or whatever, the rares from the booster packs or whatever. But it was every Friday night. And my husband and I would go, and it would be like, oh, it's time for Friday Night Magic. Like, we'd get geared up, we go to Friday Night Magic, and then afterwards we go out to dinner with our friends, right, who we met up with there, and it was just like every Friday night, it was just like, that was our social activity, right? Every Friday night we'd meet up with people, and you'd go into the store, and it was kind of like Cheers. You guys know Cheers, right? Like, I'm not too old for that, right? Everybody knows your name, right? And, yeah, and the store would be packed. There'd be like, 50 people in this store, and they'd have to like pull cardboard things out and put them on top of the comic book bins, right, to make more table space because the whole thing was packed. And so we got to Wizards, and we're like, you know what? Like, there should be Friday Night Magic just everywhere, right? Like, everyone should have Friday Night Magic. And so we put together the program, and now there's Friday Night Magic in like 6,000 stores around the world. And it really is that time for people just to get together, right? Just because there's competition doesn't mean that it's all like, I'm going to beat you up competition. It's really just get together and have fun and, be with a group of people over and over. But then it scales from there, right? So there's things that start from Friday Night Magic, which is super kind of casual and kind of hang out at your local store. Then we have things like Grand Prix events, which are these huge, like thousands of people show up in one location to all play Magic together at the same time, and it's just astounding. The biggest thing we ever did for that was we ran 3 Grand Prix events the same weekend in 3 different continents around the world. And we had 20,000 people all playing Magic at the same time around the world that weekend. And it was just the most amazing thing ever. And what everybody said who came from that is that it wasn't about going and like compete, like 3 people won out of those 20,000 people, right? That wasn't the point. The point was I got to be part of this huge community and this huge experience that was so much bigger than myself. And then, the fact that I was there, was amazing. And then we lead all the way up to our premier events and our Pro Tour events. And yeah, that is super high level, and it is super competitive. But But even though it's super competitive, it still is all about those relationships and all about those friendships. We had a Pro Tour that happened earlier this year, and the finals were happening. And if you look at the finals, there's these two guys, and they're like looking at each other, really serious, right? They're doing their stuff. But behind the scenes, what was happening in the back room is there was a crowd of like 30 people who were like cheering and jumping up and down because one of the players was from Portugal and one of the players was from Brazil. And they were on the same team because they spoke the same language and they practiced together. And they were just so enthused that one of their own was going to be the one who won this. And when they finished, they hugged each other, right? Like that's what this is all about, right? So even that highest level of competition is all about the friendships and the relationships and how you relate to each other because you play games. And I did want to put out a thought out there for folks, which is if you do run events in your store or at your club or whatever, and there is a competitive gaming event going on, stick that up on the TV or on the computer screen and have that running while everyone's playing, right? It's a really cool thing to watch and spectate together and see what's happening and talk about it and have everybody come together. It's a good participatory event too.
So in addition to that, so Dungeons & Dragons is traditionally thought of as a cooperative game, but I want to ask how many people here have heard of the Tomb of Horrors?
I have. I've been there.
Yeah.
I died there.
Yeah.
I did not.
The original Tomb of Horrors during Advanced Dungeons & Dragons back in the 1980s was run at Gen Con as a competitive event for people to play. And people played and they died frequently because that was a part of the challenge. And it was something that and just like a Magic event, people could engage with as a community and see who could advance the furthest. So far that today, we now have competitive D&D events, and we've been experimenting with them for the past couple of years now, and we've settled into a nice rhythm where we have these events where people compete as teams. So each team of players will sit at a table, and they will attempt to achieve objectives in the adventure that they're playing, and they get points for achieving the objectives more or less. Sometimes more, sometimes less. And then at the end, of course, there's a winner, but that isn't what it's about. Sometimes it's about seeing how many people basically lose their characters over the course of the evening, and they have to trade in for that pre-generated character because their character died. During our new competitive events, we don't want anybody to stop playing. We want everybody to play all the way to the end of the competitive events. Your character dies, you come up, you get a pre-generated character, you go back and you get back into the slog and you keep on going. Sometimes it's having that stack of ripped up character sheets at the end of the night in front of the Dungeon Master, and that's your call to arms, right?
You guys have like a thing with a bunch of tombstones, so every time a character dies, they put their name in it at the front of at the headquarters.
So, and everybody has a really good time, and then they want to sit there, and if they, one group will probably get to the end, and you'll hear like all the exciting like chatter and the nervous banter and the things, and they all get super amped over this event, and it's important to remember that what you're still doing is you're cooperating with a group of people to achieve an objective and have fun, being one of the main objectives, right? So, still competitive, still cooperative at the same time. It's still very fun, and we'll be putting that up on Twitter. Twitter, no Twitch. The other Twit. We're going to have a really good time with it this year. We're going to premiere it at Origins, and we're going to have it basically at conventions throughout the year. If you have a convention that you're interested in having a competitive event at, please contact us, and we'll make sure that you get it.
I want to ask everybody in the room, like show of hands, who enjoys winning when they play? All right, I figured that'd be most of you. How many of you still consider yourself mostly a casual level player of whatever game? Yeah, so what I'm trying to point out there is that just because you're involved in something where you're playing to win doesn't necessarily make you super competitive. Like, it's okay to come out and play and just challenge yourself against other people. It's okay to try to win at what you're doing, and that doesn't make you this like hardcore, just the person you hate that's going to yell at you and be a rules lawyer and all that. Like, you don't necessarily have to be that person. There's a lot of us that game that don't necessarily play super top level competitively. I mean, I used to, but now I just go to F&Ms and I just play fun decks against people, and that's totally okay. Like, you can even go between different phases where you're playing more serious or less serious. Like you can experience the games in so many different levels, but really just kind of see what it's about. Sometimes it's worth just dipping your toe in to kind of see, all right, I built a new deck. Let me just go see how good it is. All right, you may turn out your time in the lab wasn't so well spent. I've been there. Then there's other times you play and you're like, oh man, you'll surprise yourself and do extremely well. Matter of fact, the local store I was at, there was a 10-year-old that just won the F&M. He went 5-0.
I got you one up there.
Yeah. Oh.
My favorite competitive player right now, my favorite Magic competitive player right now, this very moment, there's a Grand Prix going on in Portland, Oregon. And my favorite player's there, and she's playing. Her name is Dana Fisher. She is 6 years old, and she has made day 2 of Grand Prix because she is awesome. She is really good. There was a little video clip about her, and she's like, I do not play against other 6-year-old girls, right? She plays against, grown-ups, and she kicks their ass, and she's really good, and she has a ton of fun. And so I guess my real takeaway here is that if Dana Fisher can be brave enough to go and try competitive gaming at a GP because she knows it's not just about winning, it's about having fun and challenging yourself, anybody can do it.
I agree. Anybody. Literally anybody.
Is her brother Bobby?
No.
So I want to take a moment and do something really fun. I want to go down the table and have everybody tell their most interesting or fun Magic or D&D story.
Oh, you didn't tell me you were doing that.
I know.
I'm not prepared.
All right, I'll go first.
You go first.
I'll go first. All right. So, I was just telling this story earlier, and it's crazy. So when I got my business, I was actually 21. I was actually working for the guy who owned it, and he goes off to a convention, actually. I think he went to Gen Con that year. He comes back, and he'd gotten an offer from one of the game distributors. And he comes to me and the other guy that was working for him. He says, great, I'm thinking about selling you guys a store. And I'm like, awesome, that sounds fantastic. I don't have any money. How is this going to work? And we work out a deal, and we pay more than it was worth at the time, but I basically got to buy a store with no money down. And literally, first day of business, we had the product that was on the wall, and at the time, it was a really small store. I think it was like maybe an 800 square foot store. And we had $200 in the bank. Like, in hindsight, 21-year-old me is just like, whatever, we got this. 39-year-old me is like, dude, you're ridiculous. like, the biggest mistake I could have ever made, but I was stubborn enough to make it work. And I had so many amazing opportunities in the game industry because of it. I got to meet a ton of people. I met a lot of people at Wizards even before I was here. It gave me the opportunity to write for some different Magic websites. I got to travel the country. Like, there were so many things that came from that. So it's like my fantastic gamer story, but in hindsight, oh my God, it's so scary to think about. Like, it's one of those ignorance is bliss kind of things. Like, I didn't know what I didn't know.
Well, I guess I'll just announce this so you guys can think about it while we're doing the show, the share. You guys can ask questions, and if you have any questions, you can line up at that pink line over there on the carpet. You have to stand up and go over there to see it. But yeah, you guys can start lining up if you want to ask questions. And in the meantime, I feel like my life is the craziest Dungeons and Dragons story that I have. I mean, picking up the box when I was 8, one of the beginner starter boxes, and then 15 starting to play, and 22 years later, professional dungeon master and streams and playing and going to visit Wizards. It's like a dream come true, and I get to do this 3 or 4 days a week. Yeah.
I bet you would have never thought that was an official title
No,
you would have, like
never,
professional dungeon
ever,
master.
So yeah, that's my story.
Wow. That takes a lot to follow. I'm not a professional dungeon
I
master.
don't work there yet, technically.
You are a professional wizard, though.
I am a bard, not a
Okay.
wizard. Sorry.
Bart. All right.
Best experience. So most recently, I think one of my best experiences was actually at an epic. Is at a D&D epic that we ran at GaryCon this last year, actually, and I had. It was based on a classic adventure, B2, Geek in the Borderlands, and people were playing this massive wartime scene, and they're having a fantastic time. And the last scene of the epic, the last part of it, is I have 3 boss monsters. And they're all demons. A Barlgora monkey demon, I had a Casmi fly demon, and I had Magwyn Flashin, a fairy elf demon fiend goddess, basically. And these were played by spectacular people, two of which are actually in this room. Satine played Mogwin, and Rudy, right here in front, played our Casmi Demon. And they went from table to table to table. And they didn't just do the I attack and I defend and the players attack me. There was a show at every table. It was like going to like breakfast at Disney, right? Where you go and the characters come to your table and they hang out with you. So I don't know how familiar you are with Casmi Demons. I just want to highlight this, but they have a drone ability. So Rudy went from table to table to table, and he's back fantastic at voices. In the voice of Ben Stein, attacking player characters who were suspended above the battle scene in large balloons, and talking to each one of the players who felt like they had that personal connection with this horrific monster that was getting ready to kill them. And Satine did very much the same thing, going from table to table to table, and each table was like thrilled to have her there and to interact with her in character, and then horrified when she did something and then left. Like she put a whole table of player characters to sleep in one fell stroke and then walked off, and the dungeon master cackled in glee and rubbed his hands together and started killing them. That was a good time.
That's pretty awesome. Okay, so my favorite gaming moments is, I'm actually going to give you a couple that are tied together. I have an 11-year-old daughter, and she plays Magic, and that's awesome. And her friends play Magic too, and that's awesome too. So I finally hit like cool mom status this past year when she realized that some of her friends played Magic. Like a new girl moved down the street, like 3 houses down the street, and she's like, oh, this girl, she's down the street, she's in my class, her name is Kristen, and she plays Magic. And I was like, oh my God, that's so great. And so we invited all the neighborhood kids to our house, and I brought home for everybody, I got everybody a deck builder's toolkit, and I stuffed it with like extra booster packs and welcome decks and like all kinds of stuff, and all the kids came over, and I gave them each a box, and I'm like, okay, everybody gets a box, and they all kind of looked at it, and they're like, what? what do we do with it? And I'm like, you open it, and they're like, it's all for me? I'm like, yeah, it is. And my dining room table was just covered in cards, and we had just gotten a new table, and it was way bigger than our old table. And when we had gotten it, my daughter was like, this table is just too big, Mom. And so all her friends are there with all these cards piled up, and she looks at me and she goes, Mom, I think we need a bigger table. But then later on, she got better, and I built her first real deck, I guess. It was super competitive. She likes playing single. It was a cat deck, and I love cats, and she loves cats. So I made her this cat deck, and it's really cool and good. And she went, she brought it, she played it against her friends, and of course she won because I build good decks. And it was fun. And she comes home, she's like, Mom, can you build me another deck? And I'm like, yeah, of course I'll build you more decks. What kind of deck do you want? What do you want it to do? She goes, can you build me another deck that has cards that work well together? And I said, yes, I can. She has lots of decks now.
All right, cool. So let's go ahead and get to some of the questions, and it looks like we have a little line built up over here.
Hello. I had a question. You'd mentioned, Chris, the competitive, sort of D&D events.
Yeah.
And I guess my question is on, unlike Magic, D&D rules are often give some leeway to the GM and can be interpreted in some ways, and different groups might have house rules and things like that. Is there going to be like a more kind of set notion of like almost like a tournament rules type of thing for this is where you train GMs? Like I guess my question is how will you ensure that all the players get the exact same experience across all of these?
That's an excellent question. So one of the things we do, first of all, the short answer is no. Because I really love empowering my dungeon masters. Now that said, what we do in order to manage an event like that, it's really important that you not just have a dungeon master at each table when you're running a competitive event, but that you have a single dungeon master who is overseeing the entire event, and that dungeon master is responsible for making those tricky rules calls when the rules don't specifically cover a situation. It is up to the dungeon master at the table to get that head dungeon master over to them. Now I've done this in my role of running these events as well, and they'll talk about it and they'll come to something that that makes sense between the two of them, and then that dungeon master will go off and adjudicate accordingly, and they'll continue running their table, and the head dungeon master will note that down so that when that question comes up for any other dungeon master at the thing, they get the exact same adjudication that that table got. Right? So it's really important that dungeon masters are communicating with their head dungeon master who's coordinating the entire competitive event. And it's really it's something that you kind of have to train them to do a little bit to understand that this is that moment where the rules don't cover it. You really need to call somebody over and get it documented and then move on.
Like a head judge at a Magic event kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
Like a referee.
Right.
Hi, I'm Jeff. I've been hey. I've been DMing for about the last decade with various group of people, and what I've recently come to a realization is that like D&D is one of the few things that I like have maintained a passion for the last decade. So I'm trying to push myself into that career path, but you know my background is within finance and management, and it's like I don't even know where to start to try and pursue a career within Dungeons & Dragons or, you know, Wizards. You guys have like 12 open positions right now for the whole company, you know? So what would be your advice to someone who's wanting to transition into the industry that their background is maybe not necessarily industry specific?
So we do have jobs in finance.
Yes, to her point.
Seriously, a lot of people think when they think of like, oh, I want a job in the games industry, the first thing they think of is a game designer. And they're like, how do I want to be a game designer? How to be a game designer? When in reality, Wizards of the Coast and other game companies, like we're companies, and we need disciplines throughout everything, right? And we really are looking for best-in-class people for all the different disciplines we have, whether it's graphic design or art or shipping logistics or finance or human resources, right? Everything across the board that you can imagine is there. So first off, if you're already awesome at something, I would say first recommendation, look in that field because there's very likely openings, right?
Yeah. And
That's
quick was
definitely
to
one.
start, yeah.
Yep. And then the next thing that I would say is that, well, if you do really want to be a game designer, you really want to run events, or you really want to do whatever it is you want to do, and this holds true inside the gaming industry or outside the gaming industry, whatever you want to do it in any way you can. That is really the best thing to do. If you want to be a writer, write. If you want to be an artist, draw things, right? If you want to run events, right? If you want to design games, right? It doesn't make a difference if you're published by somebody. What you do is by designing those games and doing things like that, that's what gives you the experience. And then share them and get feedback and make them better. I guarantee you, if you do those kinds of things, then you'll start meeting the right kinds of people at conventions like this. And that's how people start to get to know you and start to get to know your work. And that's how you get your foot in the door.
Yep. Specifically for adventure designers, my recommendation is to start participating as soon as you can in the Dungeon Masters Guild. Get involved in the guild, write something, put it up there, get feedback from people who purchase your product, and you'll learn a lot just by being a part of that creative community.
And, you know, get involved with the Adventures League community and get to know the other dungeon masters and the other writers because they all have something to share.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Kara, and I've been, and over the past year, I've introduced 9 or 10 of my friends and family to Dungeons & Dragons.
Thank you.
What would be your recommendation for somebody who's only ever DM'd for friends and family to moving into, like, playing with strangers to being a DM for Adventures League?
Oh, that's a good question. So it's kind of similar to Elaine's answer to the last question. Just do it. You're going to have some really awesome experiences and meet some fantastically awesome people. Then you might meet some people that you might have some, personality conflict with and stuff like that. But, the best thing is to go in with an open mind and do your best to basically take that social high road. And I guarantee you that you're going to get the best part more than you're going to get the challenging part when you're out there playing with other people. And as you continue to do that, you're going to see that every game that you have in public with a new group of people has unlimited numbers of pleasant surprises and things for you to learn because they all bring their own perspective to the game, and you'll get to see what their perspective is, and you'll get to look at the game in a different way every time you do this.
So, my first experience with D&D involved a GM sitting up on his bed with a D20 and us just all talking about what we wanted to do and him rolling the die to see how it happened, inspired by an episode of Community. And some of my best experiences with Magic have involved things like the origins of Commander and formats that aren't, controlled and ruled on by Wizards of the Coast. What have been some of your favorite experiences that have been sort of outside the normal rule set?
Ooh, outside of the normal rule set. Oh, okay, so one of the things I did, and we wanted to engage more casual players in my store. So one of the things we did on Friday Night Magic is we let people bring, we basically ran an event that didn't have a format. We said just bring whatever deck you have. The only thing we said is if any card had been on any ban list, or is, you couldn't play with it. And the cool part about that is people brought all kinds of crazy decks. They weren't overpowered. They just brought fun stuff from like boxes of cards they had that they hadn't played in a while. So we would have nights where we had like 20 people playing Commander, we'd have 30 plus people playing Standard, and then we'd still have like another 20 or 24 people playing this crazy casual thing we made up. And it was really just engaging people in a fun, different way. So it was just another way to experience the game, but you got to see a cool new expression of it just from, the super casual level.
Yeah, I think playing in a wacky draft with Mark Purvis, where everybody just kind of brought the dregs of the packs that they had, and it was just this mismatch.
Mark
of whatever.
always puts a couple of good ones in there.
Yeah, that is always like that is always really fun, and you never know what's going to happen. It's going to get crazy. It's going to get stupid sometimes, and sometimes it's just stupid crazy, and it's just fun.
Yeah. Personally, I love deck building challenges, and by challenges, I don't mean stuff like, it's, just, 3 of every card instead of 4. No, I mean like stuff like pick an artist, and you can only use cards by that artist.
Nice.
Yeah, stuff like that.
Brutal.
That's super fun, right? Yeah, try that one at home. Tweet me your decks. I'm at Elaine Chase on Twitter, and I want to see what you come up with.
I will also say theme decks are fun because a couple years ago at Gen Con, I sat down to play Commander with some people, and a guy had a Commander deck that was based around a farm theme. Like every card, he had like Elvish Farmer, he had cards that made goat tokens, like this, and I was like, man, this is sweet. Yeah, so.
My name is Murray. I've got an off-the-wall question, but I do have a statement. I am looking to open up a store, probably somewhere down the road. I learned Magic for the first time in drafting situations. I came in last both times. However, I did have fun. The D&D aspect of things, I won't mention what year I graduated, but I also heard the background about this D&D game. Unfortunately, I never got involved with, but opening up a store, I understand I have to learn the game as far as the mechanics. Magic is fun, but I really don't have time to really get into it. As a company, how are you guys supporting the small new adventure store that's coming out that I know I have to have Magic and D&D. I have to facilitate that in order to be a successful store. What support are you guys giving?
Man, I only have 5 minutes to answer this question.
This is literally Daquan's job.
Yeah, so I have a ton of things I can tell you. But the top line is we actually have tons of programs that are specifically for what we call our WPN network, our Wizards Play network. And it's specifically just to drive people into those stores. And we're also making new kits, like they talked about earlier, to kind of make it easy for you to teach. Matter of fact, if you come by our booth upstairs, we can actually show you one of the flip books we're designing for that. Like, there's a lot of different little things we do. We've even changed how we do our communications to try to train the retailers a little better, so they're just better at business and promoting our stuff. We've been making new digital assets to help them promote their events in their store or to put ads together on social media. So we have a ton of resources, But I will say, for anybody who's thinking about opening a business, one, it's super, super hard. Don't think that it's easy. It's way hard. Like, however hard you think it is, it's harder than that. So you have to really want to do it. But take a business course or take a tax course first. I think there's so many people, and I won't even say just for game stores, just entrepreneurship in general. There's a lot of people who want to go open a business, and they're just a fan or enthusiast of the thing. And there's a bunch of great things that can come from that, but you need to understand business or it's going to really, really be difficult. I even say I didn't know as much as, or actually I didn't know anything, but when I started, but it took me about somewhere between 2 and 4 years to really get up to speed. And I could have saved myself a ton of headaches and probably saved myself a ton of money, if I'd have just done those simple steps to start out with.
And
And I've done my own business, I've done retail.
You're the man.
I'm good sense, you're right.
And
You just can't walk in.
because it's community, one of the important things that I'm finding is internet. Get on Facebook, get on Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat. It sounds ridiculous, but it really helps. Animate all your photos, but also connect on all the social media things, even like meetup.com. Have a meetup for your store because that is where people go, and all they have to do is type in magic and your location, and it'll send it to you.
And also, if anybody has any more questions after we're done, we'll be around for a little bit if you just want to talk further or ask about some things.
We have 5 minutes. Right here.
Hi, my name is Brendan. I'm a teacher at a middle school in Baltimore. I started a gaming club about a month ago, and it's going great. There's about 15 to 20 kids, depending on the day. But they've started to ask about D&D, and I didn't know that you guys were going to talk about it, but you just mentioned like providing support or something like that. But I looked online, I didn't really see much about that. So where should I go to find that?
You will come talk to me at the end of this thing, and I'll give you my email address, and you're going to send me some information, and we'll work you out.
What about all the people watching on the Twitch stream at home?
Yeah.
What should they do, Chris? The people on the Twitch
Oh, for
stream
the
at
Twitch
home?
people at home, you should really, Twitch
Bomb
people.
Chris's email.
I forgot that you're in there, yeah. If you're an educator out there and you're interested in opening a club and you really want to look for ways to do that for Dungeons & Dragons and get some support, contact me at Wizards. It's chris.lindsay, Lindsay, @wizards.com, and I will sort you out. I am a former educator. I love you all who are in the education field. I used to teach high school English, and I would very much love to support your programs and get you going. Just send me an email and we'll work it out.
Thank you so much.
Hi, my name's Kevin, and for Chris and Satine, talking about organized play and competitive organized play for D&D, when I got Hidden Shrine of Tamo-chan, I learned the history of it and how there were these really granular score sheets about, did you turn left? Did you
Yes,
talk to
there
the
was.
crab? And all of those things that it's just really Gygaxian and nitpicky. Where do you see the future, now that there is more of a competitive organized play to D&D, where do you see the future of setting goals and scoring, or how do you start judging those kind of competitions in the modern era?
It's going to be much simpler than those score sheets. Those score sheets were very obtuse and hard for dungeon masters to use. They were very much built for your average wargaming crowd, so not so much your RPG playing crowd. And more, as we've moved forward, those two crowds have differentiated themselves in various ways. So, like I was mentioning earlier, it's very much going to be objective-based. It's going to be achieve this A, B, C, D, E, F, G objectives, and each objective will have a point total and all that kind of stuff. It's going to be very simple and laid out so that it's basically a check mark system, and at the end you can just tally the points and keep going forward. So we ran Hidden Shrine of Tamo-chan, and we ran Tomb of Horrors as competitive events at GaryCon this last year, and I saw those sheets, and they made my head swim, and I set them aside after I was done laughing, and I made up a scoring sheet that was much more simpler for the Dungeon Masters to use, and we'll be using something similar to that.
Outside of that, one of the things that Rudy and I are doing on the Twitch channel is we have two groups playing for the same goal, and it's a kind of survivor style, so that's another way you can do a competitive game, is the groups going after a thing. Do they get the item? Do they explode it? Who survives? So maybe it's not a number qualifier like, oh, you got this many points and you got that many points. Maybe it's just who got the thing.
Yeah. All right, looks like we have time for one quick last question, and then we got to wrap some things up here.
Hi, my name is Will. I'm a New York City public school teacher. That was originally my same question.
I love that we have so many
Thank you
teachers
to
in
you,
here.
too.
You guys are totally underappreciated. We
Yeah,
love you
for
guys.
sure.
Thank you. So I guess my final question, I came up with something else on the fly, is have there been any formats for more of a team-based PvP kind of tournament thing being done in D&D at all?
Not yet.
No, you got to do the battle royale.
But send me an email and we'll talk. That could totally happen.
I'm
but
gonna write it. It's gonna be battle royale.
Yeah, you have teenagers. Be careful. They're full of hormones and they get hostile really fast. I know this. I have experience.
It's true. I think I saw one of the enforcers show up a sign that said we had 5 more minutes. So I think if we go really quick, we can run through the line.
Cool, let's
Yeah?
do it.
I'll try to be fast.
Okay.
Another high school teacher.
Yay!
Yay, it's fun. I had a couple kids come to me a couple years ago and say, we want to do a gaming club. I'm like, that's great. When are you going to do it? And they're like, let's do it during lunch. I'm like, okay, you have a half hour. And then they spent 20 minutes, 5 minutes to get there, 5 minutes to leave, 20 minutes to play. How do I work kids to play D&D in
Homework.
a school day?
Make it homework also. I'm actually serious. A lot, we do shows every week, and I have the players do some of the background stuff. So when they get there, boom, they're ready to play.
One of the things I would say in my experience, because I've worked with a couple of schools with my store, is that sometimes you just go to the administrators and just say, hey, here are the benefits. Like, can we actually treat this as an after-school program or an after-school club? And I had a couple of different things I did with different schools in our area. Some were gaming, some I even did a disc golf thing. Like, it just depends on whatever the school needs. So something like that, totally. Come in with a small presentation, have your stuff together, and just make it an official club. You'd be surprised the response you could get sometimes.
Or may I recommend a quicker game like Magic the Gathering?
I would agree with this one. Magic is a much better 20-minute game than D&D will ever be.
Yep, for sure.
Thank you.
Hello, I had a question about the Adventures League. I participated in one of the things, but it was very combat focused and very fast paced and felt kind of rushed. I was wondering if it was because we just had so many people trying to get in there, or if that's more how they are, because I'm more used to, and I enjoy like the interpersonal role playing between characters and NPCs and that kind of thing.
That's a fantastic observation, and I'm getting that observation a lot more of late. In that a lot more folks are looking for a more role-play intensive, story immersive experience. And the one thing I can encourage you to do is we actually literally just this last week put a survey for the Adventures League up on our website. And if you want to provide your feedback for the future of the Adventures League and how we do things, including our adventure content and so forth, I would encourage you to go to that survey and give us all your feedback. I'll be personally peeling through that over my holiday break and basically trying to find a way to restructure a lot of how we do things. But that point of feedback that you just gave is consistent to what I've been hearing, and so you can probably expect to see some change moving forward. We've been using a similar system for the last kind of like 20 years or so, and we're looking to upgrade to the 21st century.
Well, Rudy and I actually both wrote Adventures League 7-3 and 7-4. They're both really minimal combat. It's about putting people in a situation, have them working together to figure things out. I think the ending of his, like, there isn't any combat. There's one combat. I think mine also has one, but it's at the end.
All right, 2 more questions. Can we do it? Do we have time?
We got one.
One.
We got one.
One.
I have a nice problem to have, in that I introduced Dungeons and Dragons to my social circle, but I'm the only game master anyone knows. What do I do when I have 20 different groups of people coming to me game mastering, and I don't want to just buy them all the beginner box?
Well, what I did for my meetup group, we basically had up to 30 people, and so I would personally dungeon master 12 to 15 person tables, and what I would do is I would get them, I mean, it's not in the rules, but I have them do a thing called Voltroning, where I make them, okay, you guys have all known each other for X amount of time. You know how you work together. You are friends. And so you have them actually go in groups, because they can actually do their moves together, and then they get advantage. And he hates it, but I do a thing called triple advantage. But it's about, what I'm doing there is trying to push the role play and less about worrying and waiting for your next turn. It's about, okay, this is what we can do together. And I try to reward that. You can reward it in many ways.
That said, we're going to be looking for more ways in order to encourage folks to become dungeon masters so that we can have more dungeon masters out there to run these groups, and you can break them up.
And that's time. But you, come and talk to us after. We'll answer your question anyway. Thank you, everyone,
so much
for coming. We really appreciate it.